What's the most horrifying how do you not know how to do this moment you have experienced with another person whilst adulting? When my friend bought a house a month into home ownership, she asked me, very pissed off, when the city was coming to cut her lawn because it's starting to look like weeds. It was awkward when I had to explain that she needs to cut her own lawn or hire someone. If she waited long enough, the city may have come and cut it for her. Also a citation and a bill. I had to jump a friend's car that wouldn't start. It had a hard time, but I finally got it running. She immediately turns off the car and says, "Thanks so much, I'll call you later." Oh man, I had a friend who was really upset because his car kept dying and he kept having to jump it. We talked for a bit and I offered to jump it so at least he could go to the mechanic. We go to his car and I help him jump it and he turns it off and says thanks. I'm just gonna go eat real quick and then I'll go. I then have to explain to the poor boy that we'd have to jump his car again, but at least he probably doesn't need to go to a mechanic, lol. I had this happen to me once. I was at the store and my work can wouldn't start. One of the guys at the supply house came out and jumped it. It started up and I moved it to the loading dock where I parked it, and muscle memory kicked in as I got out. The guy said he could see me sigh in the driver's seat as soon as it happened. At least you knew where you ducked up. Muscle memory can really suck sometimes. Had to ask my roommate to please wash his hands after touching raw chicken. He was cool to just go about his day before I asked. He thought I was being a wacko neat freak. Same guy also thought his sheets wouldn't fit in the washing machine, so he just never washed them. When I asked him please not drop silverware down the garbage disposal and leave it, he said I had too many house rules. I'm forever disturbed by the amount of people who don't seem to have a problem with touching raw chicken and not washing their hands afterwards. I didn't think anyone still did that until I moved in with my old roommate. Watched him rub his chicken and then touch everything with his greasy fingers. I think he thought I made up hygiene as I went just to piss him off. I genuinely think you must have lived with one of my siblings at one point. His response to a warning about salmonella after licking his raw chicken juices covered fingers was but you only get that in like Africa. I've got two. A girl I knew in college. Her dad called once to remind her that every so often she needed to put oil in her truck. She did. Then her truck started smelling like French fries and then died. Even after trying to explain it, she couldn't understand that this was directly related to the quart of vegetable oil she put in the motor. Another time, another party back in college, a guy demonstrated how to shotgun a beer by shoving a steak knife into it and twisting it. Also some of his hand. He panicked like crazy, made all kinds of noises, and waved his hand around freaking out and getting blood all over. He was a bit drunk, though, and these things happen. He got a bandage on it a minute later, and he was fine. My ex-best friend had told me that she had needed to buy another new vacuum cleaner, the third that month. I asked her what was wrong with it, and she said it's not picking things up anymore. So I asked if she had dumped out the container. She didn't know that was a thing. You don't have the new Dyson wormhole model? Brought to you by Aperture Science. I had a relative try to put her son on the school bus his first day of kindergarten and got upset when the driver refused to let him on because he wasn't on the list. She never registered him for school and just thought she could put him on the bus and send him. Okay, this is not quite a whilst adulting, but for as long as I can remember, my father had red eyes after showering. I didn't even think about it. One day as a teenager, a friend slept over, and in the morning she saw my dad dressed and ready for work, freshly showered, red-eyed. She asked him why his eyes were red, and he simply said shampoo. She then very carefully and as respectfully as she could muster asked him why he didn't close his eyes, and he laughed and said, "What do you think? I'm an idiot. Closing my eyes in the shower." Sheesh. My dad did a lot of things that embarrassed me, but that one was pretty high up there. Edit. To everyone saying he was getting high, you have no idea how badly I wish that was the case. I think your dad might have been smoking doobers in the bathroom. Got so high he forgot to close his eyes while shampooing. I had a friend who I noticed took Mucinex a lot. I've used it occasionally when I've been congested, but it seemed abnormal how often I saw him taking it. I finally asked him why he was taking it one time, because he didn't seem sick at all, and he looked puzzled and said, well, I think I'm getting sick. I pressed further and he said, because it's an expectorant. It turns out he thought you take an expectorant when you are expecting to get sick. That's actually pronounced analgesic, not analgesic, sir. The pills go in your mouth. Thanks Dr. Turkleton. Always killed me when he called Carla Mrs. Turkleton. 60-year-old woman was shocked that I bought 12 cans at once. Then she was shocked again to find out buying in bulk is cheaper. She has always been a stay-at-home mom and aggressively identifies as frugal. I work graveyard shift and I had to explain to a coworker that at midnight, 12 am/0000 hours, it is the start of a new day. She then had an anxiety attack because I was telling her that today is not Monday anymore. Today is Tuesday now. I had a roommate at university. Hot cooking method was put baked beans in a Tupperware, seal the lid, turn on microwave. When lid pops and explodes beans everywhere, they're cooked. Edit. Well, this kinda blew up way more than I expected. So in light of that, I'll share another story of his cooking methods. One time I came home to find the oven on and smoking a bit. Opened the door to find what was an entire lasagne bubbling on the bottom of the oven. He bought himself a frozen lasagna. Step 1, remove outer packaging. Step 2, place on middle tray of preheated oven. He literally thought that outer packaging was anything outside of the lasagne. So he tore away that shell that the lasagne cooks in and placed it straight on the rack. So as it defrosted, it just fell through the rack and all over the oven. And you can guarantee he'd refuse to clean the microwave too. You kidding? How else would he eat them? I also enjoy the top of the microwave beans. R/out of context. One of roommates in college would go through plastic spatulas like crazy. She'd melt them and wouldn't say anything about it. She'd only tell me when I'd go to use it and wonder why it was messed up. She'd always say it was due to the spatula being made of cheap plastic. No, I finally caught her one day. She'd be cooking something and would walk away leaving the plastic spatula in the pan while it was still on. Edit. Fixed some spelling. Also, I really did not expect this to blow up. Funny that so many people can relate. For those asking, yes, I know there are heat resistant wooden and metal spatulas. Remember, this was in college though. So I went to Walmart and just bought the cheapest non-stick pan and utensil sets I could find. Honestly, I like them well enough and they fit my purposes. I never melted a spatula because I don't leave my utensils sitting in a hot pan. I also wouldn't allow my roommate to buy a metal spatula since that would mess up the Teflon. I have stopped myself from doing that many a time because their parents used to leave metal spatulas in the pan, and it never occurred to them that maybe, just maybe, plastic is a little easier to melt than metal. To her credit, it's only like a 2305F difference. I only use gallium spatulas. Was making dinner with my ex and her mom. They were talking about how they forgot to put on a can of corn to go with the meal. But that's okay. They can just microwave it right. First, it took 2 of them to use the can opener. As in they took turns because the cans are so strong. Look over and they have the can cut almost all the way around. But not around the lid. It's this weird, wavy, up and down the side of the can way. Basically took the last fifth of the can right off. I stare at them, but don't say anything because, hey, not my house. They've gotten this far, why point it out now and go back to what I'm doing? Moments later they congratulate themselves and move on to the next step. Which apparently to both of them was just sticking the can straight in the microwave. Seconds later, lots of bright flashes. Both of them leap away the microwave, so I have to come around the table and do the so heroic task of hitting the open button and stop the potential meltdown. The rest of the dinner was them so shocked that metal reacts like that in a microwave. Yes, even forks or spoons would do that, and how amazed they were it's never happened before. Flash forward a year and they're buying a new microwave. Turns out they've bought all their microwaves from this one store and the owner was surprised it's been so long. Turns out, Hez a great guy. Always helps them find the best deals and even jokes about how the extended warranty is for suckers. This is going to sound weird, but manage a budget, or just in general being money smart. One of my old roommates was really bright academically, but he was terrible with money. Each semester he would start off with a pile of cash from his parents and roughly blow through it after about 2 months. I first noticed it with his dining dollars on campus. Every day it seemed like he would buy the most expensive sushi option on campus every day. We are talking maybe $18.00, which isn't terrible if it's once in a while, but this was every day. It's also college dining hall sushi, so the quality was also just okay without even considering the money spent. Of course, around midterms when his dining dollars would run out and he'd sort of panic and whine that he couldn't afford anything. But what was so strange is that when he would start to low, he sort of laugh about not knowing any way we could avoid going broke while continuing to buy the most expensive option. But he'd also get really defensive when people wanted to talk to him about this. Eventually when he moved off campus it was the same thing. For the first 2 months he'd feast. He'd get delivery constantly, ordering just way too much food. And of course he'd never share it. But then once he'd nearly run out of cash, he'd buy like an emergency 50-pack of hot dogs and only eat that for the rest of the semester, while telling everyone else that they were lucky they had money to spend, and how not everyone had it so easy when it comes to money. He'd never directly say it, but there were always a lot of implied insults. Do you know if he had ever had a job? He had never had a job at that point, though after graduating he eventually got one. My wonderful, selfless, beautiful younger brother asked me how to make ice last year. He's 24. Oh my days, this one was the first one in a while that made me nearly spit out my drink. Friend from college tried making burrito bowls for dinner and complained that some of the onions were weirdly chewy. She didn't know onions need to be peeled. She asked me if not greasing the pan when making banana bread was okay, because she didn't have anything to grease it with. She had canola oil, olive oil, and butter. She thought you could only use Pam, which I informed her was just sprayable oil. She won't cook raw meat because it's gross, and she doesn't know how to tell if it's cooked well enough to not get sick. I taught her how to make tea, how to mop, how to do laundry, how to make scrambled eggs. She has the type of mom that does all the cooking and cleaning, but I don't understand why she wouldn't have tried to pass that to her daughter. She has the type of mom that does all the cooking and cleaning, but I don't understand why she wouldn't have tried to pass that to her daughter. That's exactly why mom always did everything and never realized her little baby would need life skills someday. Infantilizing that, or mom never wanted to relinquish control of any household tasks because kids tend to be bad at stuff while they're learning. I had a coworker who was clearly doing this to all of her children. If she worked late, her kids and husband would complain because none of them could make so much as a sandwich. One time my mom was in the hospital after having a, thankfully minor, heart attack. My dad went to see her and asked whether or not she thought that she would be home to make dinner. Needless to say, they've since separated. 19-year dude, how do you cook a fried egg? Gave him instructions and left him to it. Came back a while later to ask how it went. Fine in the end, but it took a few attempts because the yolk kept breaking. What do you mean, kept breaking? Well, I kept throwing them away because I thought breaking the yolk made it poisonous. Once again, he was 19 years old. Reminds me of when I was dating a 19-year dude. I explained that eating raw nuts is healthy, so he bought a bag of peanuts. He complained 2 days later that he was going to stop eating them because they upset his stomach, so I got a free bag of peanuts. Yay. He was stunned when he saw me shelling them and eating the nut, because he was eating them shell and all. For 2 days. Surprisingly did not end well, but I got a lot of terrible sex and dumber stories out of it. Surprisingly did not end well, but I got a lot of terrible sex and dumber stories out of it. Well, don't hold out on us. Do you really want reenacted terrible sex? I was looking forward to the dumber stories. Hey, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.